The International Monetary Fund is urging Zimbabwe to undertake a series of reforms to deal with an expanding debt crisis and to help stabilize the economy. Zimbabwe is being advised to spend less on government wages, improve its tax collection, pull back on agricultural payments, and create a better environment for foreign investors. Our Washington Correspondent Daniel Ryntjes has been speaking with the IMF's Zimbabwe mission chief.
First constraint is what we economists call macroeconomic imbalances, which means that the external position of the country is weak and that the fiscal position of the country is not healthy.
So in other words, they're spending quite a lot of money, but they're not making a lot of money, especially when it comes to foreign exchange coming into the country.
Exactly. It's not easy to attract investment to Zimbabwe, given that the rules of the game for investors are not necessarily clear or are perceived as not being clear.
So we've had this response from the Zimbabwe authorities to print bonds. So they're a sort of quasi-currency. Is this something that you are concerned about given the underlying economic dynamics here?
The fact that the government is spending too much and it doesn't have sufficient revenues to finance that spending means that it has to borrow. And when the government borrows from the central bank, then money has to be created. So this electronic money everybody talks about in Zimbabwe is money that is created because there is a need to finance the government. And the bond notes are a complement to that money because people need money for domestic transactions, for small transactions, and the dollars are not there anymore.
Extraordinary number. 90% of revenues go on wages?
Yes, exactly. 90% of revenues, and that is one of the highest numbers compared to many other countries. It's about 20% of GDP, of the size of the economy. But there is another factor, and it's the support to agriculture that are quite costly for the economy.
But that's totally understandable, isn't it? We've been through a drought situation in southern Africa. People need to eat.
Yeah, it is understandable that governments support the sectors that need support, and we favor a lot that kind of support for the people who need it. The problem is when a government doesn't have the resources to support and it has to borrow at very expensive terms, and then the support doesn't necessarily is not necessarily well targeted. There is where we have a little bit of a concern, right? Because it's if one sector gets the support, all of the others also want it.
So that's the diagnosis. What's the cure? Spending
less, spending in more productive activities, and getting a little bit more from taxes through better tax administration, because the tax rates are sufficiently high. And attracting foreign investment through basically clarifying the rules of the game, leveling the playing field, making the most out of the indigenization policy. On the other hand, Zimbabwe is isolated from the rest of the world, so it needs to re-engage with the international community, because in that way Zimbabwe will unlock financing that could come to the country and would facilitate investment in the sectors that now the government is so concerned in support.